This is the Digital Savage Experience Podcast, hosted by Prokopchuk, bringing you all things digital marketing, tech, business, and motivation. What's stopping you from becoming relentless in all aspects of life? Are you ready to become a digital savage? Let's get into today's episode.
Hey everyone, this is Prokopchuk, and this is the Digital Savage Experience Podcast. Today I have with me Kyle Gorman. He's an entrepreneur and leadership coach, founder and CEO of Employer Blueprint, and host of the Employer Blueprint podcast. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, Roman, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show.
Anytime. So how did you get to the 2019 you? Please tell me a little bit about your journey to get here.
Sure. Well, right out of university, I got into a management role in the retail environment and learned pretty quickly that really wasn't for me. Just the retail environment. Management, I loved, and I've always kind of had an affinity towards management and leadership, but realized very quickly retail wasn't for me and really wanted to get more in the corporate environment. I really enjoyed or was intrigued by that corporate business world. And so was able to get my foot in the door with a large corporation and worked my way up the ladder a little bit there. Then in the 2008 downturn, we went through a pretty massive layoff, and I was part of that. And fortunately was very blessed to land on my feet through that into another opportunity with a kind of what would be considered a mid-sized business, and really enjoyed the personal aspect of the mid-sized business. And really just kind of fell in love with that. But we were then bought out a couple of years later. And when we were bought out by a private equity firm, who was looking to grow primarily through acquisition. And the whole culture of the organization changed. And that's whenever I really started to gain probably a better appreciation for company culture and what that can do for an organization and for the people within it. And so within that space, I'd kind of started looking for what that next opportunity was going to be. And my mom had started a company about 20 years earlier. And so I kind of got to talking to her, and she talking to me about what her succession plan was going to look like. And just kind of coming in and help forming and help shaping and growing the business a little bit. And so I decided to do that. And we agreed on 6 months. We said, I'll come into the business for 6 months. And if my parents decide they don't like me in the business, or I decide that this isn't for me, because I really had no desire to be in a small business environment. My goal was CEO, large company CEO. And so I really had no desire or intent of being in the small business world. But after getting in, I really loved the impact that a small business can have. And I grew a huge appreciation for the challenges that small businesses have and they face every single day. And so after doing some things to kind of help their business and taking over management of that company, I started looking at some long-term plans, and I recognized that there was a big gap in the small business world for people helping them with talent acquisition and with recruiting and personnel and hiring needs. And so ultimately in 2013, launched the company that I have today called Gorman Recruiting, and became Employer Blueprint. As we offer talent acquisition, we help with onboarding and training and management skills. And so it's really interesting kind of the way this has evolved for me, because even at a young age, my first job at 14 years old, I remember really being intrigued by what makes some managers really good and what makes others not so good, and why do I want to follow some people and I don't want to follow others. And so over the years, as I've been able to kind of put all of these things together, it's led into the business that we have today, which helps people bring on, find and onboard great talent. But then even more importantly than that really is figuring out the management and leadership skills that are needed to retain and develop those wonderful people. So that's what's led me where I am now. And we have Employer Blueprint, which is helping small businesses. And then we have the podcast and a few other brands out there that are really focused just on helping other people grow and build.
Oh, that's awesome. So what do you think is a hurdle for employers? Because I know a lot of people or companies that hire, you see some of these job posts, a lot of the time they're looking for kind of this unicorn candidate that doesn't necessarily exist, or the experience doesn't match what even that industry has been around for. So for example, I've been doing digital marketing since 2009. So in 2010, in the social media infancy, a corporate Fortune 500 was looking for somebody with 10 years of digital marketing experience. Now, I don't know if that was a typo, but I don't think so.
Right.
But it's like, it hasn't even lived, 2 or 3 years and you're looking for 10.
Yeah. Well, so what we look for on the talent acquisition side, we look for three things. We call it the APCs, and we look for aptitude, personality, and commitment. And I think that the big misunderstanding, first of all, is that within those three things, aptitude is the least of the three that we are worried about. We are much more focused on finding the right personality for the organizational culture and a person that's really committed to that type of company and that type of career. But even in that aptitude piece, when we're looking at skills, I really am much less focused on skills directly in the industry or someone that can come in and, quote, hit the ground running. We hear that statement happen a lot. We're much more focused on transferable skills. So what that means is, in the digital marketing world, as an example, I would be less concerned about someone that has 5 years experience in digital marketing. And I'd be much more focused on someone that is tech savvy, that's creative, that can understand the way people think and feel, that can help describe a product or a service in a way that draws emotion and creates engagement. Because if I have someone with those skills, I can teach them my business to go out and do the marketing, the digital marketing of that. I can teach someone how to do the specifics that I need in the business. But if they don't have those transferable skills, they're never going to be successful with the company. And so oftentimes what you see is, we kind of pass around employees of sorts. We take an employee that's been in an industry and they work one company for 2 or 3 years. And then they go to another company for 2 or 3 years. And they go to another company for 2 or 3 years. Well, on their resume, it looks like they've got, 5 to 10 years experience in the industry, but they really may not have been successful at any of those places. And so what we've got to understand is, why are they moving on? What's happening? But most importantly, what are the transferable skills that are going to make them successful with our company? And if they have the right personality, we can make it work. We can help them fit here and really do some great things for the company.
No, I agree. I think anything can be learned as long as you have kind of a foundation and a desire to do so. And like you said, that desire and that culture fit trump everything else, because you can get an expert coming in with a big ego to a company based on what they achieved, but may not be a team player. And I think those transferable skills are very important as well.
That's right. I can't tell you how many times I sit down with clients and they say, well, we want someone that has experience in the industry and they need to come in. And I remember one of the very first times I dealt with this was early on in the infancy of our company. And I sat with a potential client and we'd been working with them for several months, talking to them for several months, trying to get them to come on board with our program. And so finally I had all 4 partners of their company sitting there kind of interviewing me to determine if they wanted to hire me to go out and help with this position. And one of them made the comment, he said, well, they have to have experience in the industry. And I said, well, the more we can get away from that, the more we open up our candidate pool. And he said, well, our last 2 hires have come from competitors, and that's really what we need to find. And I just asked the question, sort of knowing at this moment that it's make or break. I said, and how did those 2 hires work out for you? Because that's why I'm here. That was really the defining moment, I think, for them as well, to say, and he did. He made the comment. He said, well, you know what? I guess that's actually a good point. Maybe we need to consider that, because the last 2 hires had not been great. They had pulled them from competitors. They did not fit well with their organization. So they had the skills, but they didn't have the personality to fit with that company. And so instead, we've since filled several positions for them. They're a great partner of ours. I don't think we've made a single hire that actually came from their industry, but they've all been great long-term hires that have worked out really well for them.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, coming from a different vertical or industry, because you bring kind of out of the box thinking that everybody is very regimented if they're in some kind of other. So let's say I've had clients in pharma biotech. Mm-hmm. So if you only do pharma biotech marketing, you only are focused on tactics and techniques within that, and don't necessarily expose yourself to things that may be doing or working in other industries that you can incorporate and basically surpass your competitors.
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah, it's that being able to just think about things differently, and that's where those transferable skills come in. If they have the basic fundamental skill set, we can teach the specifics, and I believe every company can if they have the right process in place, and we help with that, of course. But and most importantly, it's the leader in that business having the patience and the willingness to help develop someone. But if they can, they're going to be so much better off with a high performing team member than just someone that can come in and technically do the job, but really not fit well with the organization and help lead them and launch them further.
No, I agree. Do you find with the changing landscape and technology that employment is evolving as well? So let's say a lot of people are now kind of digital nomads or freelancers or have several jobs. Is there a change and acceptance in the job market in terms of employers?
Yeah, I think that there is. Every company is a little bit different depending on the leader in the business. But I think that I am an advocate of the change. I think it's a great thing for business to be able to hire good quality freelancers. It helps the P&L, and it is just truly a benefit to the business that they don't have inefficient or ineffective time. Some business leaders still want that person in the office and there's just something about that feel. But I think that we are seeing much more of a shift to that. Every year, it seems like we're getting more and more towards that. And that's something that I even talk about with our clients. If I have someone that is looking for a specific skill set, and marketing is a great example, if they come to me and say, well, we've grown to the point we need a marketing person. Then one of the first things we do anytime we're working with a client on a new position is a needs analysis. And we want to understand, what are the needs? What do you actually need? What are you looking for? So we can create kind of a candidate profile around that. And, in talking to them, where we find people oftentimes make the mistake is they have a short-term need and they want to fill a position with it that's going to be a long-term employee. And then they get 6 or 12 months down the road and realize, I don't really have enough work to keep this person busy. And so whenever we do that needs analysis, that's one of the things that we're looking at. And we oftentimes will make the recommendation, which loses business for us, but it's the best thing for the client to say, what we'd recommend is you may want to look to outsource this because of these reasons. This is going to be the cost to outsource it. These are the skills and qualifications you're going to be able to get, which are going to be much greater than bringing someone in-house. And then you can fill this short-term need that you have instead of trying to bring someone in that really doesn't need to be in the office every day. And yeah, there's definitely been a shift as the freelance market continues to grow. And I think that we're going to continue to see that shift, and I fully support it. And again, not the best thing for my business model, where I'm, helping acquire talent for businesses, but I think it's critical to just the landscape, because now what that allows us to do is, me, especially as a small business owner, I have 4 or 5 freelancers that work in different capacities in my business, all support positions such as marketing and video editing and podcast production. All of these things are done through freelancers. But what that allows me to do is it allows me people that have an expertise in an area working on my functionality, as opposed to one person that is okay at a lot of different things. And so I have experts in their field working on aspects of my business that I could otherwise never afford as a small business owner. So I think it's a tremendous thing, the way that we've seen this shift. And with technology today, the world just keeps getting smaller and smaller, which makes it that much easier for us to do these things.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, like you said, a lot of times you may not need to hire someone or have enough work, but if you find somebody for, a dedicated expert for X amount of time, you can still keep growing and still have that need filled.
That's right. Yeah. I had a situation come up. We just went through some rebranding just within the last 2 or 3 months. And in doing that, we had several things that we had some needs in creating new flyers and new graphic design work. Well, I have a graphic design freelance that I've worked with for years now, but he also does some of my digital stuff. Well, my main priority for him was we needed to get a new website up and going. And so I had all this graphics work that we needed to get completed, and I was able to go out and find some great freelancers that were able to, amazing turnaround, great price, and it looks just absolutely top notch. And I got it much cheaper than I would have if I would have, and certainly with my time, trying to do something on my own or even using some of the other, folks that I already have access to. And it was tremendous for me to be able to leverage these incredible skills that other people have to benefit my business. And I think sometimes, as especially small business owners, I think we oftentimes forget how valuable our time is. And so the more we can lean on people that have an expertise in an area and we pay them a project fee, it's absolutely worth it, as long as we're using our time in the right way, which may mean spending time with our family, or it may mean going out and trying to get new business, whatever it is. But this shift towards the freelance, kind of the gig economy, as it's often called, I think it's a great shift. And I think there's a lot of value in it for the freelancers and for the business leaders.
Yeah, I agree. And like, the world is shrinking, and you can get comparable prices, even United States based freelancers. Not only people have this fear that they outsource to countries that are known for choppier work or communication, that kind of stuff. I mean, not everybody, but if people go kind of the super cheap route, they're usually going to, let's say, India, Philippines. There are good outsourcers and freelancers in those countries as well. But it's kind of like the fear of a lot of companies to outsource. Yeah, there is a big fear, but I mean, I can tell you, I've used both American-based and foreign freelancers, and I've had nothing but great experiences. And again, I really focus on it in areas that aren't my core business. And I actually had a gentleman on my show, on my podcast here a while back, that he's made almost his entire business out of outsourcing. So, he's effectively created a marketing channel in which people come to him as the hub for marketing needs. And then he uses outsourcers all around the world to actually complete the projects. And so he's kind of the client liaison, but then he's leveraging the skills all over the world, and he's created a whole business model out of it. So, but you're exactly right, Roman. Even, a lot of our, there's some great freelance opportunities right here in America for people that aren't comfortable outsourcing overseas. You can find some amazing people that are doing some great work still at very reasonable prices without having to bring someone on board or on staff to do those things. Yeah, I agree. So how important do you think is emotional IQ for an employee in kind of any setting? And do companies look at that at all in terms of weight currently?
Well, I don't think as many look at it as heavily as they should. I think it's very, very important. And so that's part of whenever we talked about those APCs and we look at the personality piece of that. That's part of what we're looking for, is that emotional intelligence, and how are they going to be able to communicate? How are they going to work well within the team? How are they going to relate well to others? I think that it's important for every position. And of course, it depends on what the specific position is as to how important or how valuable it is. I think where it's very, very critical is the leaders in our business and the managers in our business. And I tend to use those terms a little bit interchangeably, but I believe any manager should be a great leader. I think that's just a need or qualification. And any great leader has to have a high EQ, emotional intelligence. And so I think we probably invest in that in ourselves and in others on our team less than we should, just culturally. But it's very valuable to the organization, because without it, that's what creates drama and division. It creates just more challenges in the business that we really need to be dealing with. And especially for a leader in the business, they've got to know how to relate to different people, understand what their needs are, be empathetic to someone's situations in their emotional intelligence, and how they can relate well to others and communicate accordingly.
Yeah, and I had a guest on, she made a very good point, the topic of emotional resilience. So I think that from the emotional intelligence, I mean, it's tied with it, especially for leaders. So if something goes wrong or it's imploding, to kind of keep your cool and pivot and get all the facts first, and be the one that's, obviously you are the decision maker. So you need to have a level mind and head, and kind of have an unbiased view of where you should go next. And regardless of the situation, it's easier said than done in some situations. Not let emotions dictate the decision.
That's right. I coach a lot of youth sports, and that's one thing that we talk about a lot, especially, with really players of any age, and it happens even once you get to the major leagues, but you see it much less the higher level you go. You see that players are able to adapt because all games are very mental. And so I coach a lot of football, and I coach baseball this time of year, but football for me is about kind of a 3-season sport that I coach. And it's so important to be able to, things are never going to go perfect. We're going to have issues and problems and challenges. And so it's so important to be able to get over those things and move past them. And the great athletes are able to do that. A problem happens, a bad throw, a bad catch, they make an error, they make a mistake. The ability to get over that and move on quickly is really one of the main things that can separate an okay athlete from a great athlete. Well, that same skill set applies in business and in life. So, I remember during the downturn, someone made a comment to me. The company I was with, we had, I think there were 140 of us that were let go one day. And it was interesting to see the difference in how people approached that situation. And my approach was immediately I've got to go find another job. I mean, kind of the fight mechanism kicked in and said, all right, then this is what we're going to do. And so I went and looked very quickly at what's the bare minimum that I can earn just to kind of keep my family supported while I look for another job, and what kind of jobs do I want? How do I want to look at this opportunity? Well, I took it as an opportunity to maybe pivot my career in a way that I otherwise wouldn't have, because I would have just continued to stay with that company. And I know that there were others that said, well, I'm just, I've got to go sit on the couch for 3 or 4 weeks and just kind of collect myself and figure out what's going on. Well, I, again, kind of very blessed. I landed on my feet, landed in a great position, a little more money. I mean, it was a wonderful environment, but I believe that so much of that came from the ability to see this bad thing happen. There's nothing I can do to change that. What am I going to do to make something positive out of it? Well, how am I going to use this to my benefit instead of to my detriment? And I believe we all have to learn how to do those things. We all have to figure out how can we take something negative and shift that in a way that doesn't impact us forever. Because if we mope and we groan and we pout about things, it's not going to change what just happened. So we've got to be able to move on and get over it. And that's how we can make clear decisions, and that's how we can get back on our feet. Whether it's something small that happened because you got a negative phone call from a client, or you didn't get that big sale that you wanted, or whether it's something big like you get terminated, or one bad decision, ends your career in a certain field. None of those things are good, but they shouldn't define us. And we cannot let something bad happening in our life define who we are forever. We've got to be able to move on from it.
I agree with that, and learning something from every situation or every experience, and being able to pivot as fast as possible, whether it's in your professional or personal life. So it feels like the dominoes have been falling around me for the last few months. My grandfather passed away. I've had some other stuff. I'm a foster parent. Last week, we thought we were going to adopt our 2 foster boys. They ended up being taken and reunified with their biological mom last week.
Wow.
So it's kind of just emotional roller coaster, just getting hit over and over again. Sure. And just learning, reflecting, and like you said, you can't do anything about the past, or some situations you can't control. So we're at the mercy of the state in terms of being foster parents. So we know we did a good job with them. We provided them a safe, loving home. Right. They obviously taught us a lot of things about ourselves as well, and we're different people after the experience. But I can be moping around. I can stop wanting to work or stop this podcast, but I mean, it's life. It keeps going. You learn, you reflect, and you grow.
That's right. Yeah. And first of all, just terribly, sorry to hear about your loss, and obviously in that foster situation, the greatest thing that could happen for those kids is to be unified with their parents in a healthy way, if the right environment is there. But you're exactly right, Roman, and that's the approach you kind of have to take in those situations is, what can I learn from this? And how can it make me a better spouse, a better parent? How can it make me better at my job, better at my podcast, better at everything that I'm doing? What can I learn from this? In fact, I actually, I heard on one of your shows here recently when you had mentioned that, you said, it's kind of helped even push you a little further into this show to, do something that would make your grandfather proud. And I think that's great. That's kind of that approach that we have to say that, again, it goes back to that, like, that can't define us. because life around us is still going to go on. And so we can't let one bad situation define us. We have to look at the positive and say, what door is being opened because of these things that are happening around me?
Yep. And I mean, every instant has, 1,000 choices they can make, if you think about it, good or bad. And you're the bearer of your own road. So either do something positive or negative, regardless. I mean, time is still going to go by, regardless if you sit there for a month, week, day, you feel bad for yourself, or,
right.
You reflect. I mean, I'm not saying people don't need to kind of reevaluate themselves, sure, or kind of recalibrate after a loss or a termination or being laid off, because they may feel inadequate, or this company didn't want me employed there, so maybe I'm just a bad employee overall.
Right. Yeah. And that's one of those things when we do see that happen a lot. Of course, we're interviewing people all the time, and it's not uncommon to talk to someone that has been let go or, company closed or whatever. And you can almost feel that negativity in the interview process. Well, first of all, you got to understand you can never get the job whenever someone senses that negativity. And so just for the sake of being able to move on and find a path of success, we've got to be able to mentally move on from those things. But the other thing that people have to realize, and this is the way I often put it whenever I'm talking to a candidate that is in that situation, I often I say, look, I've been there. I've been through the layoff. I've had that meeting where I'm told you don't have a job. But that, if you take that as a way to say, man, I'm looking at an amazing opportunity, because I would have stayed with this company for the next 30 years and retired from them. But now I have an opportunity to go do something different, something more. What do I want that to be? And I think when a candidate can take on that mentality to say, this is an opportunity I probably would have never taken, even if you're terminated, you weren't a good fit. It doesn't mean you're a bad employee. It means you weren't a good fit for that company for whatever reason. And so if you can take that attitude to say, they really opened me up to a great opportunity here, because I probably would have never left. But really, you probably weren't happy there. If it's not a good fit, you weren't happy there anyway. So now you can go out and try to find something you're really going to be happy with, and it's going to make you more content in life. And so look at it as an opportunity, not as this terrible negative thing happened to me and those people are so bad and they're awful. Well, if they're bad and awful, good for you. You don't have to work with them anymore. So now you get to go find something else.
Yeah, and nothing really in terms of any kind of advancements over time or in history have happened in kind of calm waters. So you need kind of a storm, that's right, to adapt to it, become stronger, and in that analogy, become a better kind of hardened sailor.
Mm-hmm. That is an excellent point, Roman. That's an excellent point. It's the storms around us that really help shape us into who we are.
Yeah, I agree a lot. So what's one thing you can leave with the audience in terms of advice, personal or professional?
Well, I think, one of the big things that I have learned over time is just resilience and perseverance and just never giving up. I've had people on my show, and I have some great friends that are very successful entrepreneurs and business leaders. And that's one of the things that I continue to see as a common thread in those that have been most successful. We rarely see or hear about the hard times that they've been through, because all we see is someone's success on the back end. But the most successful people have been through some of the hardest times. But, to your point about that storm, they've been able to weather the storm. They've gotten through the storm, and amazing things have happened on the back end of that. And so being able to persevere and being able to mentally get through those things and get over them and move on, that's one of the biggest pieces of advice that I think I give anybody is just don't give up. Keep working hard. Keep a positive attitude. Find a way to make things work. Just use those problem-solving skills and find a way to make things work. And I believe that if people weren't so quick to give up, they can really accomplish some amazing things. And so that's the biggest piece of advice that I could give anyone, and that's personal or professional. If it's in your marriage, don't give up on it. If it's in your career, don't give up. If you've got a great business idea, don't give up. Find a way to fight.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why the CEOs and company founders are there. They basically outlasted everyone else. I'm sure other people have had those similar ideas. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of ideas that are repetitive and don't necessarily reinvent the wheel, but the people that kept going are the ones that are left. I mean, it's a kind of a battle of attrition. You have to kind of outlast. Eventually you'll have some competitors, but you first have to get there.
That's right. That's exactly right. You see it happen all the time.
So I really appreciate you stopping by today. Can you let the audience know how they can find you?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And they can check out some more information. The two places I'd recommend is you can check out employerblueprint.com. That has some information on the company and kind of what we do there. And then you can also check out my site, which is kylegorman.com. It's just Gorman. So there's no E in there. But check out kylegorman.com. It's got some information as well. And both of those sites will link you to our blog and other great resources that we have. But yeah, absolutely. Go check those out.
Awesome. Thanks again for stopping by.
Absolutely. Thank you, Roman. I appreciate your time.
If you're like me, finding a place to eat is never an easy thing to do. Whether I'm in my hometown of Ewing, New Jersey, or traveling, I always find myself wishing I had a trusted friend I could call to tell me where to eat. The infatuation is that friend. The infatuation helps you find the right restaurant for any situation. Need a place for a first date? Trying to find a spot for your birthday that you don't want to celebrate except you also kind of do? The infatuation has you covered in all of these situations and many more. So if you ever need to find a place to eat but don't want to read through thousands of unreliable crowdsourced reviews, hit up theinfatuation.com or download the free app for iOS and Android to search thousands of restaurant reviews and guides in 22 major cities around the world. Or let the infatuation do the work for you by sending a text to 64560. A real person will respond and help you find a restaurant that's perfect for whatever situation you find yourself in.
This podcast has been brought to you by Nova Zora Digital. Find out how Nova Zora Digital can help your company grow online.